Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Dr. Rajkishore Sharma from University of Delhi. Today we are going to discuss about the module Instrumentation of X-ray Diffractometer under the paper of Surface Analytical Techniques 2. X-ray diffraction is not a new technique, having begun over 100 years ago, yet it continues to evolve and deliver more refined information from samples prepared with less fuss and bother than ever before. Unlike the earliest crystallographers, scientists today can purchase an entire X-ray diffraction system or perhaps can carry one as a portable unit. The outlines of today's presentation: the basic components of X-ray diffractometer, X-ray diffractometers currently in use, working of X-ray diffractometers, geometry and configuration of X-ray diffractometer, X-ray generation, specimen and sample preparation, beam profile, filters used, detectors, and finally the recent developments in X-ray diffraction. The systems, while smoothing the techniques workflow, are not themselves simple. They are composed of many parts, each with a vital role to play. Some of these parts can vary depending on the type of X-ray diffraction is required. In this presentation, we will have an overview of X-ray diffraction systems, their technology, and why some components are important for particular application. First of all, we will have a brief look on X-ray diffraction. X-ray diffraction, or XRD, is a powerful non-destructive technique for characterizing crystalline materials. It provides information on structures, phases, preferred crystal orientations, that is textures, and other structural parameters such as average grain size, crystallinity, strain, and crystal defects. X-ray diffraction peaks are produced by constructive interference of a monochromatic beam of X-rays scattered at specific angles from each set of lattice planes in a sample. Peak intensities are determined by the distribution of atoms within the lattice. Consequently, the X-ray diffraction pattern is the fingerprint of periodic atomic arrangement in a given material. First of all, we will discuss the basic components of a diffractometer. As you see in this slide, there are three components: source, optics, and the detector. In the image, we can see there are two parts. First is an incident beam part. The second one is for the diffracted beam. Incident beam part consists of source and incident beam optics, while the diffracted beam part contains diffracted beam optics and the detector. The photograph of a X-ray diffractometer. If you see the diffractometer, what it is? A diffractometer is a measuring instrument for analyzing the structure of a material from the scattering pattern produced when a beam of radiation or particles such as X-rays or neutrons interact with it. Bruker X8 Apex. Bruker is the manufacturer of X-ray diffractometers. Bruker X8 Apex diffractometer is one of the most potential characterization tool and is a non-destructive technique for characterizing both organic and inorganic crystalline solids. X-ray diffractometer, the essential parts are X-ray tube or source of X-rays, incident beam optics, condition the X-ray beam before it hits the sample, the goniometer, the platform, it is the platform that holds and moves the sample, and the detector, the sample and the sample holder, receiving side optics, it conditions the X-ray beam after it has encountered the sample, detector, count the number of X-rays scattered by the sample. The working of X-ray diffractometer. This has three steps. The first and the most often difficult step is to obtain an adequate crystal of the material under analysis. The crystal should be sufficiently large, pure in composition, and regular in structure, with no significant internal imperfections such as cracks or tuning. In the second step, the crystal is placed in an intense beam of X-rays, usually a single wavelength, that is the monochromatic X-rays, producing the regular pattern of reflections. As the crystal is gradually rotated, previous reflections and new one appears. The intensity of every spot is recorded at every orientation of the crystal. Multiple data sets may have to be collected, with each set covering slightly more than half a full rotation of the crystal and typically containing tens of thousands of reflections. In the third step, these data are combined computationally and complementary chemical information to produce and refine a model of the arrangement of atoms within the crystal. The final refined model of the atomic arrangement, now called a crystal structure and usually stored in public database. Geometry and configuration of a X-ray diffractometer. Now, we will have a look on the geometry and configuration of the diffractometer. All the three components, as shown in the slide, lie on the same circle, which is known as focusing circle. The angle between X-ray source and the plane of the specimen is theta, which is known as Bragg's angle. 2 theta is the angle between the X-ray source and the detector. Therefore, X-ray diffraction patterns produced with the geometry are called a theta to theta scans. This is about the geometry and configuration of a diffractometer. In this geometry, source of X-rays is fixed and the detector moves through a range of angles. Radius of the focusing circle increases as the angle 2 theta increases. 2 theta lies between 0 to 170 degree. During the experiment, it is not necessary to scan the whole range of detector angles. Typical scan is 30 to 140 degree. The scan range depends on the crystal structure of the material. The theta-theta geometry is most common, but other geometries are also used. In the geometry, both the detector and the X-ray source moves in the vertical plane in opposite direction above the center of the specimen. So, there are basically two different configurations of the diffractometers. One is theta-theta, other is theta to theta. In case of theta-theta, source and detector move theta while sample remains fixed. In theta to theta, sample moves theta and detector to theta, however, source remains fixed. In some cases, sample is tilted along an axis. This scan is called omega scan. It is the measure of the strain in the specimen, from which it is then possible to determine the stress. Stress is defined as the ratio of the change in length of the original strength. The diffractometer circle, also known as goniometer circle, is centered at the specimen, whereas the X-ray source and the detector lies on the circumference of the circle. A goniometer is like a high-tech sample holder. It serves to hold the crystal in the beam of X-rays, but it also rotates the sample to a precise degree. This allows the crystal to be struck by X-rays in many different orientations needed to collect enough diffraction data for quality analysis. One of the most common types of X-ray diffraction goniometers used today is known as a kappa goniometer, which characteristically consists of 4 circles and provides 3 angles of rotation for the crystal sample. One of these angles allows the sample holder components of the goniometer to swing out, which makes it easier for the operator to mount the crystal samples. The diffractometer circle is different from the focusing circle. The radius of the circle is fixed. The goniometer is the main component of an X-ray diffractometer. It contains the specimen holder, X-ray source, and the detector are mounted on its arms. Goniometer is mounted vertically in most of the power diffractometers. Component of an X-ray diffractometer. Now we will discuss the components one by one. First one is the X-ray source. X-rays are generated when an electron beam of high voltage strikes a metal anode in an evacuated X-ray tube. Both the current and the voltage are variable. The voltage depends on the target metal, for example, molybdenum 50 to 55 kilovolt, copper 25 to 40 kilovolt, iron 25 to 30 kilovolt, and chromium 25 kilovolt. Most commonly used target is copper, and the operating conditions are 40 kilovolt and 30 milliampere. When an incident X-ray with sufficient energy knock out an electron from K shell, the atom goes into excited state and the electron from higher energy level fills the hole in K shell and the atom returns to the ground state emitting X-rays. In this case, the emitted radiation radiates in all directions and is called fluorescent radiation. It has exactly the same wavelength as the characteristic radiation. As we increase the applied voltage, the intensity of the characteristic lines in the X-rays increases, but the position of the reflection and the diffraction pattern is not affected by the current and the voltage. The X-ray generation. With the sample loaded into the goniometer, next we will turn the source of X-rays on and the X-ray tube or the generator. Because it's a vacuum tube, the X-ray tube contains a cathode that emits electron into the vacuum and an anode that collects them. The resultant flow of current is accelerated by a high voltage power source connected across the cathode and the anode. When the anode material, usually tungsten, molybdenum or copper, is bombarded with electrons, a small fraction of energy is released as X-rays, while the rest is lost as heat. Most common X-ray diffraction systems use X-ray tube as generators. Another type of source is synchrotron radiation, produced by accelerating electrons by magnets through a closed path, which yields X-rays with intensities that are order of magnitude higher than conventional X-ray tube generators. In case of the generators, the electrons travel at nearly the speed of light. However, most researchers do not have access to the large synchrotron radiation facility required to generate these type of X-rays. The synchrotron radiation. Synchrotron radiation is the name given to the radiation which occurs when charged particles are accelerated in a curved path or orbit. Classically, any charged particle which moves in a curved path or is accelerated in a straight line path will emit electromagnetic radiation. Various names are given to this radiation in different contexts. For example, when it occurs upon the electron impact with a solid material target in an X-ray tube, it is called Brimlund's radiation. Particularly in the application to circular particle accelerator like synchrotrons, where charged particles are accelerated to very high speeds, the radiation is referred to as synchrotron radiation. This radiated energy is proportional to the fourth power of the particle speed and is inversely proportional to the square of the radius of the path. It becomes the limiting factor on the final energy of particles accelerated in electron synchrotrons like LEP or CERN. In other contexts, like the detector arrays in accelerator, it can be detected and used as an aid to analyzing the products of the scattering event in the accelerator. Next is rotating anode. It enables a configuration with Bragg-Brentano or parallel beam optics. Note that TTRAX3 is the only diffractometer of its kind manufactured today. That is an 18 kilowatt rotating anode vertical theta-theta diffractometer, which makes it possible to characterize a horizontally mounted sample. Its high intensity X-ray beam and high quality X-ray optics allow us to obtain good powder diffraction pattern from gold films as thin as 2 nanometer. The specimen or the sample of the material tested in a X-ray diffractometer. The quantity of powder used in experiment is generally a few milligram or less than this. The specimen must contain small, equiaxed, randomly oriented grains. Because of the multiplicity factor, the grain size of the powder can be up to 70 micrometer in case of materials with high symmetry, that is, either cubic or hexagonal. Broadening is a feature that tells about the crystallinity of the material. Broadening of peak occurs if the size of the grain are very small, that is, less than 1 micrometer, and the effects associated with preferred orientation become significant when the grains in specimen are too large. Now we will talk about the sample preparation, which is an important method to get important criteria to get good and identical results. An ideal powder sample should have many crystallites in random orientations. If the crystallites are very large, there will be a smooth distribution of crystal orientations. You will not get a powder average diffraction pattern. Crystallite should be less than 10 nanometer in size to get a good powder statistics. Large crystallite size and non-random crystallite orientations both lead to peak intensity variations. The beam profile. There are three types of beam profile as shown in the figure: parallel beam, parafocusing, and point focusing. After the beam of X-ray leaves the X-ray tube, it is filtered to a single wavelength and focused or collimated into a beam of X-rays of a single direction. This is accomplished using filters, focusing mirrors, a monochromator, and or a collimator. A collimator can be as simple as a long metal tube or more complex, such as a polycapillary collimating optics that are used in micro X-ray diffraction, that is mu-XRD, which is just like standard X-ray diffraction but specialized for very small samples. Presents a comparison between parallel beam and focusing beam. There are three types of beam profile as shown in figure: parallel beam, parafocusing, and point focusing. Now about the parallel beam. X-rays are aligned. They are lower in intensity for bulk samples. They have higher intensity for small samples. Instrumental broadening is independent of orientation of diffraction vector with specimen normal and suitable for glancing angle XRD. Now parafocusing. X-rays are diverging, higher intensity for bulk samples, lower intensity for small samples. Instrumental broadening dependent of orientation of diffraction vector with specimen normal, suitable for Bragg-Benthenow geometry. Now we will discuss about the optics. On the side of X-ray source, a line source of X-ray passes through a number of slits. These slits are called solar slits. Solar slits are about 30 millimeter long, 0.05 millimeter thick, and contains a series of closely spaced parallel metal plates which defines and collimate the incident beam. The distance between the plates is around 0.5 millimeter. High atomic number metals such as molybdenum, tantalum are used to make slits because of their high absorption capacity. The divergence or the width of the incident beam is defined by the divergence slit, which is placed on the side of solar slits. After being diffracted by the specimen, the beam passes through another set of slits, which is known as anti-scattered slits. It reduces the background radiation, improves the ratio of peak to background. Then the beam converges to the receiving slit, which defines the width of the beam admitted to the detector. Maximum intensity of the reflections in the diffracting pattern increases with the slit width, but it results in loss resolution, whereas the integrated intensity I is independent of the slit width. The filters. XRD requires monochromatic radiation, but beam not only contains K alpha line but also K beta line and the continuous spectrum. The intensity of undesirable component can be decreased relative to K alpha by passing through beam filter. Filter also absorbs K beta component more strongly than K alpha because of abrupt change in absorption coefficient between these two wavelengths. The wavelength of K alpha line is related to the atomic number by Moseley's law. As the X-rays hit faces of the crystals, they scatter in distinct patterns, which are sensed by a detector in order to be recorded for subsequent analysis. There are three main types of X-ray detectors. First is the proportional detector, second is scintillation detector, and third is solid state detector. Now we will discuss all three types of detectors in details. We will talk about the detectors now. As the X-rays hit faces of the crystal, they scatter in distinct patterns, which are sensed by a detector in order to be recorded for subsequent analysis. There are various types of detectors used in X-ray diffraction systems. However, out of those, three main types of detectors are the proportional, scintillation, and solid state. Most commonly used detector is the scintillation one. Now we'll talk one by one. First is the proportional detector. Most commonly used detector is the proportional detector. It consists of a tube filled with noble gas and has a thin positively charged tungsten running down the center. X-ray photon enters the tube through a thin window and it is absorbed by the atom of the gas and ejects a photoelectron. The photoelectron ionizes other gas atoms and loses its energy. The positively charged tungsten attracts the released electron and gives rise to a charged pulse. If the positive potential on the tungsten wire is about 1 kilovolt, then the electrons produced are accelerated, and when they collide with the other gas atoms, they further produce ionization, which is known as the avalanche production. It results in increase in the number of electrons and hence increase in the charge by several orders of magnitude. The collected charge is proportional to the energy of the incident photon, and hence the term proportional detector is used. The proportionality helps us to differentiate between X-rays, photons and X-ray photons with different energies. Second one is scintillation detector. In case of scintillation detector, the incident X-rays causes a crystal to fluoresce. For example, for every X-ray photon absorbed, a flash of light, that is scintillation, is produced. The emitted light is proportional to the intensity of X-ray and it can be measured by a photomultiplier. The energy resolution of the scintillation detector is not as good as the proportional or solid state detectors. Narrower the peak, better is the energy resolution. They have a higher signal to noise ratio compared to imaging plates, which rely on the detecting secondary photons produced by the scintillation material within the plates. Lastly, pixel array detectors boast better spatial resolution than imaging plates due to the differences in detector materials. The pixel array detector collects charge directly, while the imaging plates rely on photons first produced by X-ray striking the scintillation material. Now, the last one is the solid state detector. As seen in the image, it is a single crystal which consists of a sandwich of intrinsic silicon between p-type layer, that is, holes are the majority carriers, and an n-type layer where electrons are the majority carriers, and hence forming a PIN diode or p-type intrinsic n-type. The recent developments. As a technique, X-ray diffraction continues to evolve because its parts are regularly improved by scientists who try to achieve better results or to accomplish something never before attempted. One example of such improvement is the relatively new dual wavelength X-ray diffraction system. These systems have co-mounted sources of high intensity X-rays, for example, for both molybdenum and copper based generators. Some of these systems have also been developed with higher throughput X-ray diffraction in mind. Greater X-ray intensity allows the use of smaller or less pure crystal sample as well as shorter exposure time with speed throughput. The well-documented evolution of X-ray diffraction systems over the past century provide a solid foundation on which scientists continue to improve. Strength of X-ray diffraction. It is powerful and rapid, less than 20 minutes for identification of an unknown material. So, the X-ray diffraction technique is powerful and it takes less time, less than 20 minutes for identification of an unknown material. It provides unambiguous mineral determination in most cases. So, the results are unambiguous. It requires minimum sample preparation. Sample preparation in XRD measurement is so easy. In fact, you don't have to do anything, you just have to take your powder and put it into the diffractometer. Wide availability of XRD units. These units are widely available and easy to operate. Then relatively straightforward data interpretation. Data interpretation in X-ray diffraction technique is very simple. Now, we will talk about the limitations of X-ray diffraction, which are as follows. If homogeneous and single phase material is best for identification on an unknown, access to a standard reference film of inorganic compound is required. Material in tenth of a quantity must be grounded into a fine powder. For mixed materials, detection limit is approximately 2% of the sample. For unit cell determinations, indexing of patterns for non-isometric crystal system is complicated. Peak overlay may occur and worsen for high anode reflections X-rays. Now, to summarize, students, what we have learned today is that there are three components: source, optics, and the detector in X-ray diffractometer. Incident beam part consists of source and incident beam optics, and the diffracted beam part contains diffracted beam optics and the detector. The diffractometer circle, also known as goniometer circle, is centered at the specimen, whereas the X-ray source and the detector lies on the circumference of the circle. X-rays are generated when an electron beam of high voltage strikes a metal anode in an evacuated X-ray tube. A collimator can be as simple as a long metal tube or more complex, such as in polycapillary collimating optics that are used in micro X-ray diffraction, which is just like standard X-ray diffraction but specialized for very small samples. As the X-rays hit faces of the crystals, they scatter in distinct patterns which are sensed by a detector in order to be recorded for subsequent analysis. There are three main types of X-ray detectors. Number one, the proportional. Number two, the scintillation, and third is the solid state. As a technique, X-ray diffraction continues to evolve because its parts are regularly improved by scientists who try to achieve better results or to accomplish something never before attempted. One example of such improvement is the relatively new dual wavelength X-ray diffraction system in contrast to the original single wavelength system. Thank you.